You can't tell the story of Michael Jordan without the Detroit Pistons. In the years leading up to his first NBA championship, the Bad Boys crushed his dreams repeatedly. Detroit beat the Chicago Bulls in 5 games in the second round of the 1988 playoffs, in 5 games in the 1989 Eastern Conference Finals, and in 7 in the 1990 ECF. The Pistons were the 2-time defending champions when Chicago famously vanquished them in a sweep en route to the 1991 title. By then they were aging, and Jordan's Bulls had evolved mentally, physically and tactically. Before that, though, it seemed like Detroit, coached by Chuck Daly and led by Isaiah Thomas, was in possession of some secret formula for beating them. The Jordan Rules. In episode 3 of The Last Dance, the 10-part ESPN Netflix documentary, then Pistons assistant coach Brendan Malone explains the Jordan Rules succinctly. On the wings, we're going to push him to the elbow, and we're not going to let him drive to the baseline. Number 2, when he's on top, we're going to influence him to his left. When he got the ball in the low post, we were going to trap him from the top. Director Jason Haher follows up. What happens when he does make it baseline? That's when Lemire and Mahern would go up and knock him to the ground, Malone says. In that brief exchange lies the outline of the enduring debate about the Jordan Rules. Bill Lemire and Rick Mahern are legends in Detroit and hated elsewhere for their roughneck approach to defense. If you were a Pistons fan, then their strategy was brilliant. They coaxed Jordan outside of his comfort zone, and they did anything they could to get in the Bulls' heads. If you were a Jordan fan, then the Jordan Rules were far from revelatory. All Detroit did was swarm him and beat him up. The documentary is respectful of the Pistons' success against Jordan. Then Bulls John Paxson, Bill Cartwright and Jordan himself acknowledged that Detroit had their number. But as it is Jordan's story, not theirs, it leans toward the latter interpretation. In fairness, some of the voices saying the Jordan Rules were about smacking him around belong to the people doing the smacking. As soon as he steps in the paint, hit him, John Sally says. Chuck Daly said, this is the Jordan Rule. Every time he goes to the effing basket, put him on the ground, Dennis Rodman says. When he comes to the basket, he ain't gonna dunk. We're going to hit you and you're going to be in the ground. We tried to physically hurt Michael. In January 1988, Mahern fouled Jordan hard and threw him to the floor, leading to a fight that involved just about everybody on the court, Chicago coach Doug Collins included. Bad Boys uses this incident as a precursor to the Pistons accepting their identity. Jordan was criticizing them in the media, and they decided they would use the negative press as a way to intimidate opposing teams. Thomas says they even wanted opposing teams' fans to fear them. The Jordan Rules essentially the same way as Malone. They wanted to force him left and make him deal with double teams. Lemire adds that they wanted to hit him on screens every time to wear him down, and that it was all about stopping him, even if that meant leaving other Bulls open. Anybody but him, Lemire says. He was not going to beat us. That was the Jordan Rules. We didn't even think about Scottie Pippen. It was Michael Jordan and the Jordaners. And you can't win championships like that with only one player. The story, as Daly told Sports Illustrated's Jack McCallum in a 1989 feature, is that in April 1988, the Pistons were fed up with Jordan getting the best of them. Jordan had scored 59 in a nationally televised Bulls win, and we made up our minds right then and there that Michael Jordan was not going to beat us by himself again, Daly said. The theory, as described in the Jordan Rules, Sam Smith's seminal book. Jordan's teammates wouldn't beat you, and Jordan didn't think they could anyway, so he wouldn't pass to them. The actual rules weren't complicated, but the players were committed to following them. In a recent interview with Fox Sports' Chris Broussard, Thomas said they were trying to take advantage of Jordan being a less effective passer with his left hand and a reluctant passer in general. Any team could have implemented the Jordan Rules, but they wouldn't have become the Jordan Rules if the team didn't have extraordinary defensive talent. Dumars and Rodman both made first-team All-Defense in 1989. After the Pistons complained about what they viewed as star calls, the star complained that he was being punished. Ever since then, the foul calls started decreasing, not only those against Detroit. Jordan says in the book. The Jordan Rules entering the public imagination made things worse, in the Bulls' view. You hear about them often enough and the referees hear it too, and you start to think they have something different than Chicago assistant coach Johnny Bach said, via Smith. It has an effect and suddenly people think they aren't fouling Michael even when they are. Detroit may not have seen itself as a dirty team, but its players knew how people felt. They wanted to get under opponents' skin, and whether that meant taunting Jordan for not having won a title or committing borderline dangerous fouls, they were thrilled to get a reaction. This rivalry was based on genuine hatred both ways. In addition to the Bulls' obvious distaste for Detroit, the Pistons felt disrespected by the comments coming out of Chicago. As champions, they thought they deserved better. The Bulls' response, The Last Dance, treats the Bulls' 1991 triumph against the Pistons the same way as the Jordan and Bulls-focused home videos I watched as a kid. Detroit represented the defining obstacle of the early part of Jordan's career, and the sweep felt like a championship in itself. The takeaway is that the Pistons and their Jordan rules forced Chicago to adapt. Jordan got stronger, physically, and the team collectively built confidence. When Phil Jackson took over as coach and installed Tex Winter's triangle offense, honing in on Jordan was no longer a viable defensive strategy. It helped that Pippen turned into a superstar in his own right. It was a nice theory, Daly says of the Jordan rules in his 2007 interview with McCallum, but eventually Scottie Pippen evolved into Scottie Pippen, one of the best players in the game. And once that happened, we couldn't beat them anymore. Michael simply found other guys when we ganged up on him.
For more interesting sports news, subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notification. Please subscribe, like and share 369 Sports News. Play like a champion today.